The execution of a brand is like the making of a movie. Because you have to tell a complete story, and if you don't get the story, you can't create the set, you can't create the dialogue, you can't create the music, you can't create the emotional content. Your job is to execute the brand that has been created. This is the jewel of all fashion brands in terms of global awareness. You're talking about a brand that was invented 30 years ago, didn't exist. Probably has the highest recognition globally. I would guess that lingerie has been part of glamorous, sophisticated women vocabulary for thousands of years. Sexuality has been part of us the beginning of time. The accessibility from a financial point of view or appropriateness from a cultural point of view, very different today than it was 300-500 years ago. But there's always a sexy. I was thinking about how to grow the business, other categories of merchandise or new businesses that the business could invent, its children, its offspring. And one day I was driving to Dayton to visit stores, and just this funny thought came to me that most of the women I knew wore underwear most of the time. Most of the women I knew I thought would like to wear lingerie all of the time. And I kind of laughed and thought that's kind of an interesting way of looking at it, and then thought about it. What I thought about was underwear was pretty basic, pretty functional. Underwear's not so sexy. Guys wear underwear, girls wear underwear, but lingerie is feminine. Young women would love lingerie. And the young women I knew valued that lingerie that they had, but in terms of availability, it really wasn't plentiful. Now, over the years, we've come to look at it and say, well, underwear has functional benefits, but lingerie has all those functional benefits, if you would, technical benefits, but it does something else. When you say lingerie, it becomes emotional. It's sexy, it's glamorous. That came to the invention of Victoria. I think I have this picture in my mind, I have this word picture, I've created something, but how do I communicate the idea of lingerie, of this Victoria store? It's kind of like asking Walt Disney, did you try to invent this mouse character, or you were trying to invent animal characters, or did it just happen? I think there was just kind of a creative burst that came into Walt's head, and out came this mouse, and then the mouse got a voice, and then one day he asked himself, did the mouse have a wife? And does the mouse have a name, and what's her name? And he gave personality characteristics. So I like to begin telling brand stories with that kind of an example. In parallel with that, there's another idea that creating brands are like making movies, because you're telling a story completely, leaving nothing to the imagination of the audience. In a novel or in a written story, everybody brings their own life experience to the written word, and that's how they imagine it. And what I find very useful when I'm telling myself stories is I like to invent the storyteller. Because if I know about the storyteller, then I have an insight, I have the voice, if you would, the point of view of the author, of the creator, of the producer, of the director. And then I like to create the characters. So in Victoria, very, very important to get inside the mind of Victoria. Who would have created Victoria? In my imagination, I thought that person would be a female. And she would be very glamorous, probably somebody in their mid-30s, probably well-educated, cultured, because with the implication of culture and education is exposure and taste. So maybe it's kind of like that, more sophisticated, but as a young woman who had modeled, who had been in the fast lane, she also had an education. And I thought, well, where is she from? If she's French, there's a whole connotation about lingerie in France. If she's English, maybe she's a little bit mumsy. And I said, well, I think I'd make her father English and her mother French. Then I would raise her in a multicultural background. So she had the best of English taste, French taste, and exposure, an open-mindedness and inquisitiveness, but a European point of view. That same young woman, if she were raised in England and France, would be very different than raised in Southern California. If you take that same point of view and you say her mother is French, her father is English, she was raised in Europe, pretty sophisticated family, went to a school like Oxford or Cambridge, but was also very attractive, had a great figure, and she could do modeling. And her point of view is she always loved lingerie. She likes being sexy. She likes looking terrific. So she knows what women want in lingerie, because it's what she wants. And she has wonderful exposures. She went to St. Bart's through high school and college, and now in her married life, first with her family and now with her husband. She goes to the south of France in the summer, and she goes to European ski resorts and North American ski resorts in the winter. So she has exposure to brands, to creativity, to high taste, and she opens up a lingerie store for fun. And because of her exposure, models, young business women, movie stars, movie star wannabes, just glamorous women flock to her store because her taste is just so terrific. She knows what they want because she's been there and she still wants that. I flush out her personality and that gives me her view of the world. And I kind of look at this and say, at one end, I say, here's Victoria, who's forever young. Time stands still for Victoria, just as it does for a James Bond. It's like Victoria's Victoria. She's in late 30s. She's lived in the fast lane. Her friends are supermodels, actors, actresses. She travels over the world. She just knows what sexy is when she sees it, and she loves lingerie and all the things that go with it. I come back at this, I'd say now, if I could amplify that and really understand how Victoria sees the world, then I can kind of guess, well, what would her shop look like? It would look feminine, it would be modern, it would be wonderful to shop in. She would have the kind of shop that she'd like to shop in herself. This is the ultimate lingerie shop, the ultimate feminine shopping experience in the world. It's all about my world and things that make me feel terrific and good about myself. So the root in building a brand is that everybody has to understand the brand story, the nuances, and has to understand what movie we're making. And it's really hard to make a great movie. Each character has to be understood, and all the creative people that create a movie, the directors, the producers, the costume designers, the set designers, the cinematographer, the person that scores it, the editing of the film, has to understand what is the emotional content, what is the story, how are we attempting to tell the story. You have to understand what role you're playing. Everybody can't be the director, and everybody can't be the set designer, and everybody can't be the cinematographer. We all have roles to play. And I think for the brand to grow and be successful, there has to be a lot of curiosity, a lot of understanding of the foundation of the brand, the story, what got us from where we were to where we are, and then a lot of very creative thought, debate, and discussion about the evolution of the brand. Why did Walt create this mouse? And why do children, again, coming up on close to 100 years, value him? And let's understand those core values and how they've worked over time. So as we evolve the forever young Victoria, we're doing it in a thoughtful way. And that has a commercial logic to it, and it gives longevity to the brand. My encouragement is to be curious to understand why the brand has been so successful. And is the story that we're telling a timeless story? Romance, beauty, glamour, sex appeal, pretty timeless characteristics, but they always evolve. That notion of how we evolve so that we stay current, and whether it's in store design, marketing, packaging, so the brand continues to evolve. It evolves from its roots, from its heritage, is a very artful thing and has to be done very thoughtfully.